the architecture of self. A psychological analysis of personal boundaries in the landscape of modern psychology. Few concepts are as misunderstood, and yet as vital, as personal boundaries. We often visualize boundaries as brick walls, moats, or electric fences designed to keep people out. However, a more accurate psychological metaphor is that of a property line or a gate. Boundaries do not exist solely to repel, they exist to define where you end and where the rest of the world begins. Without a distinct property line, you become public property. For many living in the United States, a culture that simultaneously champions rugged individualism and extreme availability, the always-on work culture, the erosion of boundaries has become a silent epidemic. We find ourselves overcommitted, emotionally depleted, and navigating a chronic low-grade resentment. This analysis aims to dissect the psychology behind why we struggle to protect our space, the high cost of people-pleasing, and the linguistic tools required to reclaim our autonomy without guilt. Part 1. Anatomy of a healthy boundary. To understand how to say no, we must first identify what we are protecting. Boundaries are not merely preferences, they are the guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave towards them. Psychologically, boundaries manifest in 5 distinct domains. Physical boundaries. This refers to your personal space, privacy, and body. It is the visceral comfort level with touch, the proximity of others, and your physical needs, rest, hunger, thirst. Emotional boundaries. This is the separation of your feelings from another's. Healthy emotional boundaries mean you can be empathetic to someone's pain without absorbing it as your own. It is the understanding that you are not responsible for regulating another adult's emotional state. Time/energy boundaries. Perhaps the most frequently violated boundary in the American corporate and social sphere. This refers to how you prioritize your time and to whom you give your bandwidth. Intellectual boundaries. This involves respect for your ideas and thoughts. It allows you to differ in opinion without internalizing the disagreement as a personal attack or feeling the need to conform to the group consensus. Material boundaries. This concerns your possessions and finances. It defines how much you are willing to share, lend, or give, and how you expect your property to be treated. The spectrum. Porous, rigid, and healthy psychologists often categorize boundaries on a spectrum. Porous boundaries. This is the open-door policy gone wrong. Individuals with porous boundaries tend to overshare personal information, have difficulty saying no to the requests of others, and are often involved in relationships characterized by over-involvement or codependency. They fear rejection if they do not comply. Rigid boundaries. On the opposite end, these individuals build walls. They avoid intimacy in close relationships, are unlikely to ask for help, and can seem detached or aloof. This is often a trauma response, a defense mechanism to ensure they cannot be hurt again. Healthy boundaries. This is the middle ground. A person with healthy boundaries values their own opinions, doesn't compromise their values for others, and shares personal information in an appropriate manner, step by step, based on trust. Crucially, they can accept a no from others as easily as they give one. Part 2. The psychology of yes. Why no feels dangerous. If boundaries are essential for mental health, why is maintaining them one of the most difficult tasks for the human psyche? Why does a simple 2-letter word, no, trigger a cascade of anxiety, guilt, and physiological stress? 1. The Fawn Response and attachment theory. Evolutionarily, humans are pack animals. In the Paleolithic era, rejection by the tribe meant death. Today, this survival instinct is encoded in our amygdala. When we consider saying no to a boss, a parent, or a partner, our brain interprets the potential conflict as a threat to our survival. For many, this triggers the fawn response. While we know fight, flight, and freeze, fawn is the 4th trauma response. It involves immediately acting to please to avoid conflict. If you grew up in a volatile household, or one where love was conditional based on performance, the good child syndrome, you likely learned that having needs was dangerous, and suppressing them to please others ensured your safety. 2. The cultural conditioning of nice in the us, particularly for women. There is profound socialization to be nice and accommodating. We conflate being nice, agreeable, compliant, with being kind, honest, benevolent. The nice trap. Nice is a behavior often driven by fear of how you will be perceived. The kind reality. kindness is driven by values. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for a relationship is to say no rather than saying yes and harboring resentment. 3. The fear of missing out, FOMO, and scarcity mindset in a hyper-connected society. Saying no often feels like a lost opportunity. The hustle culture narrative suggests that every no is a closed door that might have led to success. This scarcity mindset tricks us into believing we must hoard opportunities, invitations, and tasks, leading to inevitable burnout. 4. Lack of identity. One of the more painful psychological truths is that an inability to set boundaries often stems from a lack of self-identity. If you do not know who you are, what you value, or what you want, you will inevitably default to what others want you to be. You become a chameleon, blending into the expectations of the room because you have no solid self to stand on. Part 3. The cost of boundlessness. Living without boundaries is expensive. The currency is your mental and physical health. The most significant indicator that a boundary has been crossed is resentment. In therapy, resentment is often described as the smoke alarm of the soul. It signals that you have given more than you could afford to give, or that you have silently expected a return on an investment that the other person never agreed to. When we ignore this alarm, the consequences spiral. Compassion fatigue. You become numb to the needs of others because you are overwhelmed by them. Passive aggressiveness. Because you couldn't say no directly, your frustration leaks out in sarcasm, procrastination, or forgetting to do the task. Somatic symptoms. The body keeps the score. Unspoken boundaries often manifest as migraines, digestive issues. IBS is highly correlated with stress and people-pleasing, and chronic fatigue. The victim complex. Eventually, the boundless person feels like a victim of their life. Everyone takes advantage of me, failing to realize that they are the one handing out the scissors to cut their own fences. Part 4. Reframing the no. To begin setting boundaries, we must undergo a cognitive reframe. We must move from viewing boundaries as rejection to viewing them as protection. The golden rule of boundaries. A no to others is a yes to yourself. When you say no to the extra project at work, you are saying yes to quality time with your family or restorative sleep. When you say no to the social event you don't have the energy for, you are saying yes to your mental stability. Furthermore, boundaries are actually a tool for intimacy. Brené Brown's research highlights a counterintuitive finding. The most compassionate people are also the most boundaried. Why? Because they don't agree to things they will resent later. When they say yes, they mean it. This makes them safe to be around. You never have to wonder if a boundaried person is secretly hating you for asking a favor. If they agreed, they wanted to do it. Part 5. The toolkit. Phrases for every situation. Knowing the psychology is one thing, having the words is another. In the heat of the moment, the amygdala, emotional brain, often hijacks the prefrontal cortex, logical brain, leaving us stammering. Here are scripts designed to be firm, kind, and definitive. 1. The pause, the most important tool. The biggest mistake people make is answering immediately. You need to buy time to check in with your internal compass. The phrase, "Let me check my calendar/capacity and get back to you." Why it works. It stops the immediate fawn response. It gives you space to ask yourself, do I want to do this? Do I have time? 2. The soft no, for low-stakes social situations. This is for when you want to maintain the connection but decline the event. The phrase, "I'd love to see you, but am keeping my head down/recharging this weekend. Let's look at next month." The phrase, "Thank you for thinking of me. I'm not able to make it, but I hope you have a wonderful time." Why it works. It validates the invite, "Thank you," but draws the line clearly. 3. The workplace no, professional and capacity-based. In the U.S. workplace, saying no can feel like career suicide. The trick is to frame it around quality of output. The phrase, "I don't have the bandwidth to give this project the attention it deserves right now without compromising my other deliverables." The phrase, "I can certainly take this on, but I would need to deprioritize Project X to meet the deadline. Which would you prefer I focus on?" Why it works. You aren't saying you won't work, you are acting as a responsible steward of company resources. It forces the manager to manage, rather than dumping the load on you. 4. The family/relationship no. High emotion, these are the hardest because the emotional stakes are highest. The phrase, for unsolicited advice. I love that you care about me, but am not looking for advice on this right now. I just need you to listen. The phrase, for intrusive questions. That's a topic I'm not comfortable discussing. Let's talk about safe topic instead. The phrase, for holiday obligations. We won't be able to make it for Thanksgiving dinner this year. We've decided to have a quiet one at home. Let's FaceTime for dessert. 5. The hard no, for violations or safety. Sometimes, explanations are loopholes for the other person to argue with. No is a complete sentence. The phrase, I'm not willing to continue this conversation if you are going to yell at me. The phrase, no, that doesn't work for me. Why it works? It offers no purchase for negotiation. It is a wall, not a gate. Part 6. Managing the aftershocks. Guilt and pushback. Once you say the words, two things will happen. You will feel guilty. They might push back. Dealing with the guilt. Guilt is not always a sign you did something wrong. In the context of boundary setting, guilt is often just growing pains. It is the feeling of breaking a contract you signed when you were a child, the contract that said I must please everyone to be good. Acknowledge the guilt, but treat it like a passing weather system. I feel guilty because I am changing a pattern, not because I harmed someone. Dealing with pushback. Extinction bursts. In psychology, an extinction burst is a temporary increase in the frequency or intensity of an unwanted behavior when the reinforcement for that behavior is removed. When you stop being a doormat, people who were used to wiping their feet on you will be upset. They may say, "You've changed. You're being selfish. I guess you don't care about the team/family." This is not a sign you should retreat. It is a sign the boundary is working. The response, I understand you're disappointed/upset, but my decision stands. Do not jade, justify, argue, defend, explain. Over-explaining weakens the boundary. Part 7. How boundaries open up your space. The prompt asks, how do we open up our space? This seems contradictory to setting boundaries, but it is the ultimate paradox of relationships. Imagine a house with no doors and no windows, just open holes in the walls. Anyone can walk in. Thieves, neighbors, stray animals, the wind, the rain. You are never safe, so you are never truly relaxed. You cannot be intimate because you are constantly vigilant. Now, imagine a house with a solid door that locks. Because you have a door, you can now choose to open it. Boundaries create a container of safety. When you know you can say no, you become less afraid of saying yes. You can invite people into your emotional space because you know you have the power to ask them to leave if they hurt you. Vulnerability. True vulnerability requires boundaries. You cannot share your heart openly if you have no way to protect it. Respect. People unknowingly respect those with boundaries. It signals self-worth. When you respect your own time and space, others follow suit. Presence. When you clear your life of obligations you resent, you open up space for the things you love. You stop doing life and start living it. Conclusion. Reclaiming your personal boundaries is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong practice of self-definition. It requires the courage to be temporarily uncomfortable in service of long-term well-being. For the American psyche, conditioned to equate value with output and likability with compliance, this is a radical act. But remember, you are the architect of your life. You get to decide who walks on the lawn, who comes onto the porch, and who gets invited into the kitchen. Start small. Say no to a small request. Pause before you answer. Tolerate the guilt. Watch how the sky doesn't fall. And slowly, observe how your space, once crowded, chaotic, and exhausting, becomes a sanctuary of your own making.